I'm glad you came back.
Not to sound selfish, I'm worried about me.
It's very normal, but I need to know more.
Depression? Anything like that? It's just not me.
Layla needs to understand that she was born black and she was born a woman.
You shut down at the mere mention of the size of your burden.
It's not a diagnosis people like to hear when you're taking care of their son. It's insomnia, the nightmares. I haven't slept in 6 days, y'all.
I care about you, Layla.
You don't know a thing about me. I'm always gonna look out for her.
Don't doubt that.
What I am hearing is a lot of avoidance of some very difficult subjects.
I really didn't mean for it to go this way.
But that doesn't matter either.
And let's put an embargo on this particular topic.
These people are looking to me to tell them what to do about this moment we are in.
So if you were treating you, what would you say?
Hi, my name is Gil Robertson, president of the African American Film Critics Association. Today we have a real treat for you as we welcome the talented cast members as well as creatives of the hot HBO show Intreatment. We're going to get started by introducing you to the AAFCA members who are involved in the conversation today, starting with our facilitator, Katia Woods in Philadelphia, Carolyn Hines in Toronto, KB in Houston, Texas, Ray Cornelius in Atlanta, Nancy Green, I love the hair, Nancy, in Los Angeles, yes. Al McGee in South Florida, hello. Rhonda Rasha Penrice in Atlanta, Sharonda Williams in Atlanta, Rebecca Ford in Chicago, and Brandon Collins in the great city of New York, Queens, New York. And we also have Karen Lenore in Charlottesville, Virginia. I'm going to let you guys do what you do so well, and I will see you on the other side.
Hi, it is KB here with the Color Grade Podcast. I am loving this show. So my question is for Uzo. Can you talk a little bit about, this role and Brooke's journey this season, and not only how she advocates for the protection of Black women and girls as a therapist, but also in turn applying that to her own life?
Yeah, I think we are meeting Brooke through the brilliance of her creation by Mr. Joshua Allen in a space of intersection as far as her past and present life. She's a reflection of what it is, I think, oftentimes to be a Black woman or woman of color in this life, often carrying both her strength, but rarely being able or having the space to show her vulnerabilities as well. And I think she grew up in a community, a family, where architecture was a huge piece of that household, everything being perfectly or wanting a family that wanted things perfectly designed, and having that thrust onto her child's shoulders. I think when we get to see her in session with patients like Layla, the brilliant Q Quintessa, who plays her so fearlessly and beautifully, it's a little bit for her of a second time around, trying to find a way into preventing some of the hardships and traumas and pain that she has experienced in her own life, trying to safeguard Layla from some of those things as best she can. To free up Layla into living her fullest, truest self, even though she knows she herself is somewhat blockaded at the moment from taking in and owning her own traumas and pain. I think she takes that responsibility and that job very seriously. I think she takes her job very seriously, but I think in Layla, she sees a lot of herself in her, and hoping to, I don't know, pave the way a little bit, make the way a little bit less stony for her. And then I think on the other side, when you're watching the Brooke episodes, you see her being, you see her resistant, more resistant to being cared for by Lysa in the ways that she's so ready to care for others. And that dynamic is one I can understand, is one I think was exceptional and exploring in the show.
Well, thank you so much. I'm loving everyone's characters, especially, Dr. Brooke Taylor's different layers. And also shout out to the design and the wardrobe, because I was living for it. Living.
Yes, that design team was phenomenal, from the house was just so, I mean, before we even got to set, seeing a lot of people be like, it was like Jaws or something, people would be like, not getting to see the shark. People would be like, have you seen your house? It's amazing. And I'd be like, I haven't seen it. I was like, heard it enough times. And then I was like, I hope I like this house, because everybody said it enough times to me that I saw it. I was like, have you seen my house? It's amazing, kind of a thing. They did an amazing job with that production design. And then, Tiffany Hasborn, who is phenomenal as a costume designer, had a really beautiful array of work, not just, I think, with Brooke, but all of the characters, and everybody can speak to their own experience with that. But I thought she had a real mastery of form. I thought from mature to young, youthful to all body shapes, male, female, she really understood the human form and made it a priority to dress every form impeccably. And that was, I think, really where you get to see her talent and craftsmanship.
Thank you so much.
Hi, Carolyn First. So Here's What Happened podcast and Carolyn Talks. And I'm so happy that you're talking about the costume design, because that's what my question is about. And it has to do with the structure of the costumes and the coloring, because I noticed, especially for Brooke, like her costumes feature corsets and belts, and a lot of her outfits have ties. And I saw that as a way as like her putting on armor to prepare for these sessions. And for Liza Quintessa, I wanted to ask you, like I noticed there's a change in the coloring of her outfits and her structure. So I wanted to ask the both of you about using these costumes to inform your character and your portrayal. And Joshua, if you could talk a bit about how that informs the writing as well, or how the writing informs the costume design.
Yeah, I think it was really fascinating for Layla, because it's kind of like the way she's grown up. Her grandmother has just kind of like, you're a young girl, so like you have to dress like a girl, you have to wear these colors. Pink is the color a young girl wears, so like you have to wear that and kind of like be drenched in like feminization in a way. And I think as Layla kind of works through all of the trauma with Brooke, she kind of like sheds all of those layers that don't service her as far as like representation, identity, and really getting to the root of like who she is through her clothing, and also like allowing herself to breathe a little bit and like not be so pent up and kind of like in the guise of someone else, but rather like her own self. But yeah, I thought that was really fascinating too, actually, Uza, that you bring that up. She definitely did have a vision.
Well, my character's a high school counselor. So her style is, working class, clean, casual. we didn't discuss in detail what my clothing symbolizes. We didn't go deep into discussions about what my color palette is. I just noticed that they were deeper jewel tones. Um, and they were pretty, really open to what I felt comfortable with in my body. Usually the fitting is like so traumatic, and they were so sensitive to what I felt okay with. And they had great music. Man, we used to dance in that fitting room. But yeah, I would say, by you'll see how it becomes more of utility wear by the end, as the work, as as the relationship gets more strained. It goes less from work wear to like hiking.
I think, Tiffany and I, we had conversation before we started, and because I was curious, like, what is this going to be, because it's not set in an atmosphere where I'm wearing a uniform, which I was used to. It's not period where it's dictate or a real life person. So a lot of where, costuming for, a role I played before was dictated by what she actually wore, in all fronts of styling. So I was curious, how is this going to sort of come together? And we had both agreed, that Brooke might have, she's a plus size woman, and Brooke might have her issues, but comfort in her body is not one, or discomfort in her body is not one, excuse me. That she has, she celebrates and loves her body. And so, when you're tipping into the space of fashion with that conversation, it's like, okay, are they going to understand what I mean by that? Or is it going to be like, we're going to put you in a pink muumuu instead of a black one? Like, is that what, like, what is that going to be? Like, I'm being just honest, And it was amazing because then she sent over this board with all this incredible style, personality, and fashion. And I thought it was such a strong point of view because for two reasons. Number one, it said everything you needed to know about how this woman presents to the world. And it said everything you needed to know about why this woman presents to the world. I thought by wearing the colors that she chose, the fit that she chose, told you that her insecurities don't tread in the world of body positivity. But then there was something really incredible about how put together this woman is during a pandemic when we all have been through pandemic and know that the uniform has been sweatpants for like 90% of the pandemic, in quarantine. So that this woman who is always well manicured, made up, hair done, and in a fully pressed look, I started to see it as a veil, like a mask. This was the mask she chose to wear. And then there was an interesting conversation we had early days about the belts and the corsets you were talking about, Carolyn, and how, when she would be in session with Colin, it was a little bit more straight laced. Everything was like a thinner belt, cinched, like pulled in because he was giving her a bit of more of a run for her money. Patients that she would show up for in color, Layla, there was a bit of like, as she would go on, she wanted to have like, she's not trying to be a kid, but she's giving a little bit more pop of personality, and more, you would see more print and things like this, more body con, things like that. But yeah, she was always pulled up, always with a corseted waistline. And I thought it was great. I thought she did a great job.
Great, thank you so much. And I noticed that for the scenes with Rita, she wore like a lot of gray. So I kind of saw that as like their relationship was in this in between stage and it was uncertain. So I love how the costume kind of does inform the roles and the characters and their progression.
For sure.
Can I say something really quick?
Yes.
Yeah, sure.
First of all, Uzo, I didn't notice, and I feel very mentally taken advantage of. Like, I'm just like, wait, maybe that made me feel something that day. That's brilliant. Wow. Wow.
Yes.
Sorry.
A lot of thought went out to that layout, that scheme.
Wow.
Thank you.
Ray Cornelius here with Upfront Inside the Entertainment Industry. Congratulations on an amazing show. This question is for Uzo Aduba. Wanted to know, you play Dr. Brooke so effortlessly. I mean, I could not stop watching you on the screen, but you were actually going through real grief in real life. So how therapeutic, if you will, was this character as you were dealing with loss in your personal life?
It was, I think, listen, loss is hard for anybody who's dealing with it. It's, it is, but you find a way to navigate through. I think projects find you, and then some projects you find. This is a project that I, for the rest of my life, will never know why Josh and Jen came to find me, but here we are. Usually with my work, it feels like something going out that is given going this way. And I can say with certainty, this was something that I got a lot from as well. And this was a project, and that was from the writing and the stories, and equally from the performances and the open heart. I don't know how far along all of you are into the show, but these women, these people, along with our incredible other cast members, have such a dynamic fire, power, strength, and vulnerability that I don't think they'll ever know, like, what an offering that, art is an offering. And it was your work, Q, your work, Liza, your work, Josh, was an offering to me, but will be such an offering to so many other people. I don't even know if you know how incredibly impactful. They are a trademark of excellence, all of them. And the breadth of their work, the speeches, and like just the heart openness, it helps everyone, right? When people come into a space with that much vulnerability and that much heart, it moves you, it changes you, it shifts you, it heals you. So certainly did heal me.
Yes.
Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Katia Woods, Couple Social. My question is for you, Quintessa. One of the things I really like about the show, that through your character, is that not only do you get to advocate, but the adults are advocating indirectly with the interaction, maybe not the grandmother character, but Dr. Brooke, and talk about how much say did you have in that interaction, and how much was on the page, because it really was, I think, an important thing in that situation.
Well, I definitely have to give it all to Josh and every single one of the writers. They just put a immense amount of thought into the intricacies of Layla's storyline, and that genuinely was all them. I think the only thing that I had in my power was to create an ethos for all of the experiences that Layla was going through, both in the past and actively, and just represent that as honestly as I could. But that was because of the words being there on the page, which yeah, I don't know. I feel like script is king, and it definitely was there, honestly. And it proved to be like a really like cathartic experience, honestly, to finally have someone put the words together. But yeah, that was pretty much all Josh.
Well, it was beautifully portrayed, and I have to co-sign KB. Outfits and hair were on point. Thank
Oh
you.
yeah.
Hi everyone, Brandon Constantine, Beauty and Popcorn Podcast. My question is for Joshua. I want to know, what was it like organizing and filming this project during COVID, and how that impacts your usual process for producing?
Oh, I mean, there is no usual process for producing, but I will say I learned that working 5 seasons on Empire, that there is no usual process for producing. But that's not to impugn any individual person. That is just to say that, you know, you never know what you're gonna get day to day. But it was, we created as safe a space as we possibly could. We had robust testing. We created a stage at the Warner Brothers lot where we had testing literally like 10 feet away. And you know, anybody who came into any direct contact with the actors had to test 3 times a week. It was very, very, very robust in terms of figuring out how to keep everybody safe so they could do their own work. Because we were clear very early on that we didn't want actors wearing masks on camera, because we were like, that mean, are we shooting Grey's Anatomy? Like that's what they did. Like, is this a surgery scene? Like we can't, like that belies the effort and the intensity of what these actors are doing. We need to see their whole ass faces. So that meant that we needed to be very clear about how to keep them safe. And so there were days where I was breathing halfway through a mask and then another mask and then goggles and face shields in Video Village. Like I almost passed out a few times, but whatever. Like, you know, you suffer for your art. So we just wanted to make sure that we created the best environment possible so that the actors could do their best work without fear.
Thank you. Phenomenal job, everybody.
I'm Nancy Green with Film Critique, and my question is for everyone. I read an article recently about the show in an interview, and the subject of the stigma with therapy for Black people was mentioned. And that was one thing that I was thinking while I was watching the show. And I wanted to know, how do you think that that's going to come across? Because right now, therapy is a bit more popular amongst Black people. This stigma is kind of going away, but it's still there. And I wanted to know what impact the show might have on that topic.
Okay. I think it was top of mind for us when we first created the character of Dr. Brooke Taylor as a Black woman in America in this moment that we're in right now. I think that it was very important to us that we use this as an opportunity to destigmatize, to say, you might be able to see yourself, casual television viewer, you might be able to see yourself represented here, whether it's represented as a consumer of mental health services or as a provider of mental health services. Like, I don't know, maybe some woman of color is going to watch this show and go, oh, I didn't realize that like I can have impact as a mental health professional. Maybe I should go to graduate school and do this. Maybe that will happen. I don't know. But we just wanted to expand broadly the idea of what therapy means, what it is. It doesn't mean you're in a Woody Allen movie in 1978 living on the Upper West Side of Manhattan. It doesn't mean that you're crazy. It doesn't mean that you are schizophrenic. It doesn't mean that you're a Jack Nicholson in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. It doesn't mean any of those things. It means what it means. It's Liza heard me say this earlier. It's like going to the dentist. Like, you got to keep your teeth clean, right? You got to keep your head clean. And so we're trying with this season of the show, with the diverse therapist and patient pool, to just sort of pull the wool off of everyone's eyes, and just this is maintenance. Like, it's maintenance. And there are many avenues that historically were not available to certain communities that now are. And so go get your mind cleaned the same way you go to the dentist. I don't know if that answers your question.
No, yeah, absolutely.
And I had a friend, and I totally started using this term, who used to call therapy brain gym. I thought that was a great
100%
way of describing it, brain gym. And to the point, that's how I have it saved in my phone. This brain gym. Yeah, and I think what Joshua said is just that. It's exactly right. I don't think there requires any expansion. Hopefully it will just continue to expand out in our community.
You're so, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh yeah, no, I was just gonna say
You're so right, because you wouldn't, everybody who walks into a gym, you wouldn't call them fat. So everybody who walks into a therapist's office, you can't call them crazy. It's the same idea.
That's right.
So I think we have to start changing the conversation around that, so that we don't deter people who would otherwise take advantage of these resources because they're afraid of the stigma. Like, that's going to keep us all in a dark place.
That's right.
Hey, this is Al McGee with YETicket.com. This question is to you, Joshua, but it's about the whole cast. Did you make every member of the cast do an audition, or you just said, hey, I know who you are, come on in? And any cast member too can talk about their experience getting a part on this great show.
Well, I will actually respectfully throw this to the performers who are here, and they can speak about their experiences joining the show, because it's always a mix of things. There are people that, you have audition, and then there are people that you meet with, and there are people that you hope you can get a hold of. But I will let Quintessa and Liza and Uzo take this.
Does it have to be in that order? No, I'm playing. Okay. So basically, like, when I had seen the script, or basically the character breakdown, at first, like, I was just really nervous. I was very scared of the vulnerability and just kind of like the circumstances that like a therapy show would bring up, and if I could be as present, I guess, as this character was in all of the scenes and throughout the season. And I think initially I'd only seen a small portion, and it was like, I don't know if it's like a spoiler, but I'm not gonna say it. Well, it's like in the first episode, and she.
Doubt means don't, Quintessa.
Doubt okay, no, I'm not. No. But it was just like a small portion of kind of like the facade that the character has, and I saw that facade as being the character in totality. And for me, I was like, I don't know if it's mine to play, or if someone who has like a greater experience with that facade would be better for it. And then I was kind of like learned more about the character, and learned more about, of course, like, she presents this particular way, but there are layers, there reasons to why that wall has been built up. And then once I learned all of that, I was like, no, I have to like, audition for the character. I have to send something in and like really give it my all, because it's a privilege to be able to say all of the words that are in the script, and it's a privilege to be able to like be in this space and be saying things that are so important, not only for our community but also for the queer community, like for like teenagers kind of going through this experience of self-identification and being conflicted and having identities shift and like flow, and what that kind of looks like. So it was like, I would love to take that on and yeah, make that something special. If that answers the question.
Yeah, sure. Thank you.
Hello. This is Karan from Karanism.com. And my question for you is, Intreatment is one of my favorite shows. It lacked a little bit of seasoning, so I'm so glad you all are here. But it's such an intimate look into sometimes really dark and intense therapy. And in the context of what's happening in our world, especially with social justice and the role that mental health plays in social justice, in what ways has this changed or shifted your compassion or your perspective for our mental health providers?
I can say that it's wholly shifted my, or I wouldn't say shifted my compassion. I think it's deepened my compassion for them. I have been in therapy. I think that it had never occurred to me to really think about the fact that there was someone in here before me, and there's someone behind me, and someone behind them, and that this is what their day is. This is their day. And it started to hit me when we would be filming, and we do, of course, on any show, like multiple takes of something, right? And to hear whether it's Quintessa or JBH or Anthony share their characters' stories and realize, wow, this is what the day is like, for someone who's a mental health care provider. And it sort of struck me that these people are responsible for managing or holding space for every single person who comes into this room, while also simultaneously managing their own challenges and struggles. And I don't know about you all, but if I think of just my own things that I have to manage to now take on another person's, that's a heavy lift. I said, I just started sitting there thinking about, like, I would sit there sometimes thinking, like, this is a really hard job that we don't give enough attention to, credit to. And it just made it a deeper respect and a deeper compassion for what they are responsible for in their workday, and what probably some of them take home as well.
Amen, Uzo. I mean, I feel like one of the reasons why I felt like it was important for the therapist this season to be a Black woman was because, and here I go, about to get pretentious, about to quote James Baldwin. He's my idol. But to be Black and to be in America is to be in a perpetual state of rage. And so there is that. And then there's also kind of like the low grade simmering PTSD that a person of color in America just kind of walks around with. And so when I was thinking about creating this therapist character, I was like, oh, well, who could be more empathetic to someone's struggles than someone who has walked around with a low grade PTSD in this country? Like, who could be more empathetic to that than someone who is living it at a simmer? Sometimes at a saute, sometimes at a boil.
Yes.
Liza, do you agree?
I absolutely agree. And woo, yeah, I'm always trying to balance, like, the way I come off often is like, she's angry. She's an angry person. And I don't always think of myself as, I'm like, but that's just how I am. But then again, in the context of what you just said, then okay, and it's justifiable. But what I loved about the series from years ago, was that we got to see who the therapists, how they go from compartmentalizing to sharing and being able to unload that. They're just people, they're not perfect. They have flaws, they have weaknesses, they have breaking points. And so when I got this audition and I'm reading it and I'm like, oh, their confidants were always people with PhDs. And I'm a high school guidance counselor. And there was something about still being able for these two women to have this real talk without especially with one of them being a woman of color who doesn't have all kind of credentials on the wall. Like, the credential is you, is your heart. And so it was just a no-brainer from the beginning in reading the script, but then to reimagine it, that I could be a confidant without, and still be able to stand in my truth as I live it.
Hi, my name is Rebecca Ford, and I'm with the Chicago Daily Law Bulletin. And my question is just very related and overlapping to the discussion that we just had. And so for the cast members and for Joshua, I'd like to hear about the conversations you had about how having a Black therapist is unique, right? And so she can address things that other people can't address, and how you talk to each other about how you were going to accomplish communicating that through the script, through the backstories that were created, and that kind of thing. The uniqueness of having a Black woman be a therapist, she can do what others can't.
I mean, not to pawn this off on y'all, but I feel like Q and Uzo, some of the most impactful moments I've ever had on set on this show were watching the two of you wrestle with trauma and the experience of I was raised by a bajillion Black women, but I'll never be a Black woman. I don't know what that experience is. But at the same time, I had to shepherd a script to birth. I had to doula it into life. And so through y'all. And so maybe y'all are better equipped to speak to this than I, because I've never seen a conversation between two Black women of different generations than I saw on set when y'all were really in it.
Yeah, I think, listen, like, to touch on what Liza said, these are human beings, despite being sort of responsible for managing or not managing, but holding people's experiences with them, for them. And being a human being, Brooke is moving through the world like every human being has had to move through this world. Every Black woman has had to move through this world. Every Black person has had to move through this COVID pandemic, cultural pandemic world. And she did not become Black overnight. When the show was written, she's been Black her whole life. And so therefore, she will hear, her ears and experiences will tune differently, perhaps, than a Paul Weston's ear might tune. Things that a Colin may say, that, and I'm not even talking about perhaps, say the grand things that might have come out of his mouth. It may have been the smaller things that he may have said or not said, that her ear will register differently than, say, were it a Paul Weston. And therefore, what she's hearing will spark an entirely different series of questions as follow-up, because what she might see herself there to treat could be different than, because she moves through the world as a Black woman, might be different than what, say, a Paul Weston might hear and see, observe, and be there to treat. And that spills over into Layla, going back to what I was saying in the beginning, what she is able to view. Josh did such a beautiful thing of setting Layla's world. Layla's the only person from Brooke's world. It's the only character who tracks Brooke's experience, upbringing, exposure, privilege, expectation, right? And in hearing that, seeing that, and observing that as a Black woman, and seeing that there's a separation here in her queer experience, right? Maybe that this is the difference, knowing that there's yet another person here, like, I don't know how the question was framed, but we're talking about a person who has Black women have had to carry a lot. And I feel like queer Black women have had to carry even more. Have had to carry even more. So if she knows from her seat what she's had to hold and carry, she can only then imagine what a Layla has had to hold and carry. And what her ears tuned to might be different than what someone else's ear might tune to. And I think what's so beautiful about giving this show that space is to reflect that.
I feel like I have just like a smidge more to add, but Uza, said it beautifully. I think there's like this level of safety that Layla has never had in any other space. Like, not only is it like us being, from basically the same background, but it's also just this like deeper understanding of having had all of the innate trauma that we've had growing up, but also this expectation not to talk about any of it. And I think though it like takes time, it's like seeing that in you and allowing that to just, I don't know, to just like to be able to be opened up in a different way. I don't know how to explain it that well, but it was, yeah. Sorry, y'all.
It was
I like said it all.
It was great.
Hi, everyone. Sharonda Williams from Pay Your Weight. This is for Liza, Uza, and Quintessa in that order. I wanted to ask all of you, how freeing is it to play these characters that get to just exist and just to unload? While watching this reminds you that you never know the weight that a woman of color is carrying. And you get to see this as we delve into your characters' familial relationships, friendships, and really just also to the traumas of being a person of color in this country. And I want to know, how freeing was it for you to actually be able to portray the multiple complexities of what it is to be a woman of color today? And like, we could start with you.
Well, I I mean, in general, it's weird when you walk into a room and it isn't predominantly people of color writing for you. And to somehow I find myself, the characters always having to explain why they're there. Like I have to exist in context as to why I'm part of this world. And to have that unfold as normally as it would for anyone else, with that sensitivity, was incredible. And the safety with which to do it, in the writing, that full story. Because honestly, I never thought I would have a chance as an actress of color to play a role like this. Never thought it could happen. And so it was incredibly freeing, validated years and years of struggle, validated to receive that trust that, like, you've paid your dues and you're enough. And to be surrounded by this level of talent on every level, right? But this layer, the talent up here, and to finally feel that if you're in this room, it's because you deserve to be in this room. You know, and for me, feeling imposter syndrome all the time and constantly I don't think it's just a character flaw. And so, you know, it's systemically built into the psyche of this country, right? For us, for me. And so to be in this room where I can just be a complicated human being and an artist, it's freeing, but it shouldn't be, but it is. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think for me I feel like with people who are around my age range now, there's like this feeling of helplessness and this feeling of like our most tangible thing is kind of like social media. That's how we have learned to, as of recently, in the past year, re-educate ourselves, unlearn, learn about other communities that exist outside of our own, learn about things that are happening around the world that isn't just like in our social studies books. And seeing and being hyper aware of like all of these other things, it's kind of like, well, what can I do? How can I help? And I feel like Layla is in the thick of that experience. And to be able to be given the words to express that, it's not only in the lines that I was talking about, like being a part of a hate crime, like experiencing that, wanting to like be a part of this experience that everyone else can visualize. I don't know why, I just have to say this. I feel so emotional talking in this space right now, and it's very beautiful. But it's just that feeling of wanting to be a part of some change, but knowing that like history keeps on repeating itself and that there almost feels like there's no way to like shift anything. And I think there's just like this overarching frustration with Layla. And she keeps on going over and over it like in her head. And it's something I go through. It's something I'm like going through currently. But I'm like so indebted to Josh to be able to have range to experience all of that, honestly. So yeah.
And Uzo?
I would put it like two ways. I think, because you like stopped my heart just now, Q, when you said that about feeling emotional. I think it's like looking right now at all these boxes of people who have always existed, whom we have not always had the exceptional privilege of getting to communicate the fullness of the parts that we've played and understood in that complexity. But you have all existed. So I'm always existed, just as with every strong Black woman trope we've seen told, her vulnerability has always existed. We've just never been given the opportunity to see it, see that side of story, see that lens, see things told from that perspective always. It's not always been something that has existed. And for me in this role, it was exciting to get to see equal time given to all of who this woman is, not part of who this woman is, and see that told fully with equal level of importance, attention, and measure. Because we see the strong side always, but we never get to see where that strength was built out of. How many times she had to hurt or feel or fall, or how many tears were cried or shed to get that strength, to find that strength. And I think that, Josh, you've done such a beautiful job in helping to present her fully by giving her that strength and command in session. But then, you know, I think of Brooke, I say all the time, like, wow, not since college did I imagine I would start talking about spirit animals, but here I am, I'm like, she's a duck, you know, like, I'm like, you know, like, she's super on the surface presenting together. And then underneath, you know, we see those little, what do we call them? Legs? What you know, paddling hard to stay afloat, and having that wonderful balance of Brooke in session, but then having a Brooke episode, and you watch her, you can see the threads, you know, that sometimes they break and she has to sew them back together so she can get back into session. And that range of complexity was great to play. It was exciting to play. It's exciting to watch, just as it's exciting to see the wholeness of entertainment journalism be played out here.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate all of your responses. Thank you.
Hey, it's Rhonda. My question is for Josh. I want to know the backstory of this adaptation, because Intreatment was one of my favorite shows I watched religiously. And so I'm intrigued, when did this come about? Because it seems like such a perfect quarantine show. And also thank you for setting it in the part of LA that I know.
Right. Baldwin Hills and
right.
Oh, okay, you're done with your question. Okay. So I think there was a sort of two-pronged inspiration to how this came about. I think primarily there was a desire on the part of HBO to do something really relevant that spoke to what we were all going through. And, you know, people were talking about mental health last year that had never even thought about mental health, because we found ourselves in very unique circumstances. So that was part of it. And also just practically, it's very easy to produce, relatively speaking, it's very easy to produce a show where mostly it's just a couple people sitting across from each other. You don't need all them extras. You don't need a car chase. You don't need dragons, you know? So that kind of made it a bit of a no-brainer for HBO. I think also I just have to say that when they went to a whole bunch of people and were like, what would you do with Intreatment? And maybe it was because we were just beginning a moment of sort of racial reckoning in this country that, you know, started to feel like maybe this ain't one of them pretend moments. Like maybe this is a real one. Because they still in the streets a month later. Okay. Mm-hmm. And there's white people in Portland who's in the streets. So maybe this is real. And so I was like, who better to shepherd this than a woman of color, than a Black woman? Like, who better to understand what's going on than this? Who better to shepherd the rage and the grief and the fear and the, you know, of anybody than someone who has, you know, who has all of that in her DNA. Yeah, that's how that sort of came about.
And it fits perfectly for that area of town. Like Brooke is very, like for LA, for the people outside, it'll look shocking. But for people who know LA, it makes perfect sense.
Totally. And that was another thing that we thought about early on. We were like, well, she could be in like Beverly Hills, but like, okay, we've seen that. Like turn on 90210 reruns. Like we've seen that. So like we wanted to show an area of LA that people don't really see or know about. And as a matter of fact, we pointed at it in an episode I'm sure y'all have all seen, where Colin comes over and he's talking about the area and he's like, woo, okay, wow, this is interesting. What does your husband do? You know, that type of condescension, that where it's like, no, we've always been great in this community. We've always been doing it. So just because you didn't know we were here doesn't mean we weren't here. And that's what we were trying to get at with that. And that's what really excited me about setting the show there.
Wow. Quintessa, Liza, Uzo, and Joshua, thank you, thank you, thank you. This was an amazing conversation. On behalf of the world's largest group of Black film critics, we thank you for watching another episode of AAFCA Roundtables. Have a great day.